أول شيء بس
تسلم.
خلينا نرحب بالجميع ونتكلم بالعربي فيها ترحيبتنا العربية والإسلامية. السلام عليكم جميعا ومشكورين على الدعم الطيب. I would like to thank everyone who's attending this session today and excuse my English in case sometimes I'm speaking a bit fast or a bit slow, but I hope to finish my presentation within the defined time. Today, my presentation will be talking about the cybersecurity and how to be safe digital, especially once we are talking about the OT environment. Once I say OT, I'm talking about the operational technology infrastructure or network, which is covering the nuclear power plant, energy and utility sector, luggaging system, airport system, whatever. So once I say OT, operational technology, what I means behind it, I means non-IT system across the world. Basically, why I have selected this topic is specifically about the OT security or the concerns behind it. The threats landscape being increased. However, there is a mandate from the organization to be innovative. And in order to be innovative in digital, we have to integrate between the IT and OT environment. Especially during the COVID period, it's the key driver or the accelerator of the digital transformation, which is put a mandate on us to stop a lot of operations for people on specific to be available in the places due to the people's safety. For that makes a lot of the digitization process comes to that OT environment in order to reduce the human interaction or people to be on site. I hope this introduction takes us to the next level, or that's enough. I would like to talk about why do we need security, first of all. By the way, all the information that you're gonna find it from the first 2 slides or 3 slides, it's all data, but there is a reason behind it. The reason behind it is one reason, because we are talking about the cyber security in terms of the data. If you see those 10 points in the left side of the presentation, majority of the business are being performed manually. But nowadays, all the business moves in automations or let's say in digital era. And there is multiple data sources from different version within the same data. At the same time, there is disrupt technology, uses outdated technology, but nowadays all the technology are new. If we saw those points, nowadays it does not be applicable on the IT environment, but it's applicable in the OT environment. Why? Because the OT, a lot of the systems being either years or decades. But if we see the measures of the IT transformation or digital transformation, there is cyber landscape, there is digital landscape, there is cloud and computing, there is consumerization that we have to go. And we see the category of the IT risk behind it, it's all the data. If you see it in the last column on the screen. So we find the data in the major assets. We find the data in the critical asset of the organization, and it's the first risk across all the entities. And if we want to understand the problem and the consequences, data is the most valuable assets. And once the business runs and relies on the data and information, because if I want to run successful business, I need the data. If I want to do successful digitization, it depends on the data and the integration. Securing sensitive data is must, and even it's not sensitive, we have to secure the data in order to avoid any consequences. Solution should be in place. In the IT solution, there is a lot, but once it comes to the OT, there is lack of vendor or lack of technology or resources that helps on the OT security. So data security breaches or leakage are gonna impact the business that due to the lack of awareness or the technology on the place. Everybody looking to the 3 different angles from product and process and people because of the lack of product, lack of processes, lack of skill set. There is data leakage because or loss of data because of the intentional or unintentionals, and that consequences impacting our reputations, impacting our market share. There leads to the legal actions in number of the informations or the consequences. If we see this angle triangle information, it's all in the IT, but is it in the OT environment also? Yes or no? That's what we are looking at to the other slides. If we take the data layers or data controls that we are doing in the IT environment, we are putting set of questions. What data do we have? What the value of data? Who access it? At what time? Where the data? And this data is customer data, or is it personal, or the company data, or transactional? And this data, where is it? Is it at rest, in motion, in use? So we have to govern all these operations. And what about in the OT? This is the question we have to ask it. If we take the IT layer or the industrial layer, there's a service layer, infrastructure layer, user layer, data in motion, in use, data at rest. So we'll find the data is playing major roles. So based on this introduction, we find the data is a critical asset. But what about in the OT environment? What about in the energy, utility, aviations, nuclear power plant, in the road and transport, which is non-IT environment? So we reached a conclusion, security is a key business enablement. And the impact of the cyber, once it comes to the corporate, there is a financial impact, impacting the trust of the people and impacting the company value. And all of us understand once Verizon been acquired by Yahoo, it reduced the acquisition cost about $30 million. And we find when there is a financial impact, when there is any compromisations to the entity, the average loss of each compromise is about $10 million. If that entity that been compromised lose 5% at least from its value or the acquisition cost, 65% of the trust of the people being lost on the company itself. So we reached a conclusion, protection, detection, response, and recovery is very important. But if that cycle being taken, 22% plus of the company shares being increased if being recovered very quickly. The main challenges of the operational technology and the concern, there is no defined standard yet. And if there has been a standard or the compliance or regulation to be followed to secure those environment, you will find it either being in the starting or in mid of the way and not being completed. Unlike the IT or the information security management system, which is ISO 27001, unlike the business continuity, unlike the IT service delivery, unlike the information assurance practices being in place and being there. We will find that 72% plus of the organization, they have a concerns about their OT. That concerns coming, first one is the availability and the continuity. They don't want to do downtime. In terms of patching or update or the entities being compromised. So if the nuclear power plant or the energy or utility sector being down, that whole the city or whole the country will be impacted. For that being, all the organization try to avoid it. In update and patching is very hard and must be approved by vendor themselves before we are doing the patching on the OT environment. Why we are talking about it has to be approved by the vendor? Because the vendor, they are the one who implement the technology in the OT environment. One, two, to avoid the risk from the entity itself. Number two, patching should be tested extensively, because before we go for the what they called it in the real environment or the main operational network, that we're gonna stop the business operations. That downtime, 1% or 1 minute loss or downtime, or let's say 5 minutes downtime, how much will be impacting from the financial, from the perception, or from the trust of the people. Once we coming to the people challenges, general awareness on OT is not being there. Security specialists on the OT, there is a lack on it. Leadership on the OT, you're gonna find it limited, because you will not find someone spend all the life on the OT environment. Either find that someone started in the IT industry, then moving to the OT and the experience is being lagged, or starting in the OT industry and then moving to the IT industry, or continue on the OT, but they are moving to the different domain, not specifically on the cyber. Testing of the OT environment is very difficult, especially once it comes on the production. Why? Because that setup is being there and being built for years or even sometimes decade. Because if we take it from the return of investment of the operational technologies, at least takes from 12 to 13 years, and that depends on the scale of the setup. If we take it from the factors driving, or let's say business driving to the OT security and where we should start, the business require converging between the IT and OT. They are looking to minimize the breaches. They are looking to the compliance from the standard. And that demands, or those business drivers being increased, especially during the COVID time. Why? They want high availability. At the same time, we want to monitor those OT environment. And there is a lot of demand now, the new demand there, which is to integrate between the IT and OT, because they want to make it one system, to monitor it in the centrally, to less the human interaction on those places. There is poor security hygienes, because the breaches on the small breaches on the, let's say, on the OT environment will lead to the big impact. And one example, we can say these breaches, brute force attack, or for the man in the middle attack, especially in the password. And if we force the password changes in the IT environment after 5 failed login, that will not impact the IT environment. But if we implement this policy within the OT environment, that leads to the huge consequences and impact, because that will lead to stop all operations. Depends on the setup. Compliance became a mandate. So what is the right setup for the OT organization, or let's say the setup from the cybersecurity people, or let's say entities planning to integrate between the IT and OT? We need organizational structure to be in place. That organizational structure should be like OT centric, and should be including OT engineers, at least. Not one, at least a group. There are so many questions being raised. What is the right organizational setup for the OT technologies or the OT environment? Some people, they say, I will build the capability internally. Some people said, I want to outsource it. Some people said, I want to build the capability from the IT and train them to be an OT expert. If you ask me this question, what is the right setup? I will tell you all of them right. Depends on the organization standard, or depends on the organization structure, or the environment itself. None of them is perfect, and none of them is bad. Not all of them is good. Again, depends on the organization setup. OT framework. It's a drive OT centric framework. We have and assure the customization to OT environment based on its type. The framework, there is no framework is perfect, because whatever framework being implemented on the airline system, or let's say luggaging system, is different from nuclear power plant. Is different. Nuclear power plant is different from the energy. In energy is different from road and transport. So the framework, it has to be customized, cleared with clear process in place. Because when there is clear process in place, we are minimizing the risk and assure each step being in place based on the delegation of authority, based on approval, based on the best practices, and it's been monitored. Awareness. The third one, we have to have on place solid awareness program, including the HSE, the health and safety standard, along with the security awareness, because one breaches or compromise that gonna impact the health and safety. It leads, for example, in the injured, especially within the IoT environment or the OT environment, especially when there is unmanned solution. So we have to have awareness program in details, including cyber, health and safety, IT operations, OT operations, all of them collectively. What I recommend, we have to have IMS, Integrated Management System. Once we have it in place, that we assure that the program is covered all the aspect of the operation, IT, operational technology, and all of them. So OT security maturity, I prefer this cycle based on the best practices. We have to keep regular assessment, and this assessment coming using the available standard on place such as NIST, NERC, NEI, or ISA 9001. That one give us clear visibility using universal assessment framework and will help us to identify the gap. Based on that, we have to do a transform stage. Transformation stage, we have to identify the target state and the end state with a strategy roadmap. And this strategy roadmap covering all the aspects from the vision and mission and culture, because not everyone who work on OT can adopt the IT, and anyone who work on IT and can adopt OT environment or OT experience. Monitoring, we have to keep eyes open on the OT environment, specific, especially on a threat, intel, in the patch management, on the access right, and all the procedure to be monitored from people, from the processing, from the technology itself. We have to keep in place the continuous update and practice. Why this continuous and practice? What do I mean by continuous and practice? Continuous implementation, continuous enhancement, and practice should be as a lesson learned that we are learning from our environment, not only what other been learned. Because whatever experience or use cases, or let's say challenges we have faced it, other environment they have not been facing. So as a conclusion, from implementing OT, having cybersecurity in place, we should have proper architecture, and that architecture should be documented, secured, make sure that the architecture design is your cryptocurrency, and that recovery key, nobody should know about it, and make sure that the architecture, nobody should knows what is the architecture, the design, unless specific people, because that design, if being compromised or being shared, you're being targeted easily. The access right, we make sure that the access right is being assigned with based on the process, based on the delegation of the authority of the company. We have to identify the compromise impact. Once we identify and identifying the impact of the any compromise, we can identify all kind of consequences and risk. And we have to keep this drill or practices across the year. Even we can do this practice even weekly if possible. Why? Because every day there is new threats. Even we think sometimes that small incident is not important, but it has huge consequences. Best practices, we have to keep always the eyes open based on the international best practices and other environment, and we have to learn it. Even yes, we in the beginning I said what's applicable to energy and utility sector is not applicable to the luggaging system or road and transport or nuclear power plant, but we have to see what's other being faced and how they live with the situation and recover it. We have to work as risk-based approach and keep everyone is accountable for about decision, about delegations, and about anything related to the OT. I hope that I finish within the time and I did not take longer.
Thank you so much for your time and the insightful session. It was really informative and inspiring.
Thank you very much. Any questions, please feel free to reach me out, or if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer.